Well, hi friends, welcome back. This is lesson 3 of our art project based on the artist Degas called Horsing Around. So you've joined me for the first 2 lessons where we did our preliminary drawing of our horse in our pasture. And then the last time we were together, we laid in our base color with our soft chalk pastel. So because this is a soft chalk pastel project, it's a little messy. So make sure before you start working that you have what you need to keep your clothes clean and your hands clean. So I'm going to put my art smuck on while I tell you what you're going to need for today's lesson, lesson 3. You'll need your drawing as it is so far. You'll need your set of 24 soft chalk pastels. You'll need a dampened rag to wipe your hands. You'll need a nice eraser. I prefer a kneaded eraser, but you can use a white eraser. And optional, if you don't like to get your fingers messy, you can have tissues so that you can work with tissues. Okay, so we've been talking about Edgar Degas, who was considered one of the premier Impressionist artists, even though he didn't see himself as an Impressionist. He did so much work during that late period of the late 1800s. And his 2 favorite topics were ballet dancers and racehorses. And I want you to take a look at this painting by Degas. This is called Horse Race Before the Start. You'll notice the horse that has the jockey with the red silks on. Well, that type of horse is called a bay mare, and that's the kind of horse that I'm going to be doing. Now, you don't have to do a bay mare. There's lots of different types of horses. A bay mare happens to be the type of horse that has a reddish-brown coat, but has dark points. That means the mane, the tail, the muzzle, and the bottoms of the legs are much, much darker, very dark brown, leaning towards black. But there's a lot of horses. In fact, I don't know a lot about horses, but you might. You might live near horses or ride horses. You might even own a horse. And so you might know much more about them than I do. There's the Palomino. The Palomino is a butterscotch colored breed that has beautiful ivory tail and mane. And then there's the dapple gray, which is white hair on dark skin of a horse that has gray spots or flecks on its flank. And then there's the Pinto, and that's a horse that has big brown splotches or patches on that horse. And so depending on the horse that you want to do, which I would encourage you to research all the types of horses there are, you can adapt your drawing to that kind of horse. But I'm going to be doing a bay mare. And so we already have our base color, and now we're going to be adding in a lot of layers of color in order to get the result that we want. That's one of the best parts about chalk pastels, my friends, is the fact that you layer in colors, lighter strokes, darker strokes, and adding in colors that might even be surprising to you. So since I'm going to be focusing on my horse, I'm going to get out all the colors that I think I'm going to be needing, right? So I'm going to get a lighter tannish brown, my original rusty brown. Here is a really dark brown. Again, I'm going to break the stick. But I'm also going to get some colors you might not expect. I'm going to get this ochre gold, and I'm going to get some green and some blue, some darker blue, and this bluish green. And this peach color. Now you'll understand why in a little bit. The first thing I want to do is to provide some more volume and definition to my horse. So we're going to start here with the rear leg. Let's talk a little bit about how the horse is structured. You know, horses are very muscular. They don't carry a lot of fat on them. So you can see, even when they're running, everything kind of ripples and moves because of the skin just floats over the muscles. And so it's really important that we show muscle definition where the rear hip meets the torso and where the front shoulder meets the torso. Right now it's all very flat. So the way that we do that is I'm going to use my original color. I'm going to go back over the rear part of the horse. I'm going to blend that in. So it's another layer of the same color. Then I'm going to take this darker brown And right where that hip meets the torso, I'm using the edge of my pastel and I'm putting in some color, and I'm going to blend to create that shadow of where that muscular hip meets the torso, just like that. Can you see that? I'm going to do the same thing up here. Go back to your base color, that hip or that shoulder area. I want to make that color a little more intense. And then with the darker color, right where that shoulder meets that barrel chest of the horse, I'm going to draw in some of this darker brown to make some more definition. You can see that already, how that's popping out. But I don't like that. I want to get some more of that beautiful color, base color, so I'm going to lay this in. And this is what pastel work is all about. Layers, layers, layers. Now, because I'm working in just these two colors, back and forth, I'm not cleaning my fingers each time because I'm okay if these two colors blend. There's such a thing that occurs in working in pastels where things get muddy, where you aren't careful about what you're mixing, and so the colors mud up together. I'm not worried about that now. I'm staying with these two colors, this darker brown, and I'm layering in right behind that shoulder. Now the underside of the torso, it's going to be a darker value because it's on the underside of the horse. So I lay in this brown. And now, because I want, as that barrel chest of the horse moves out, I'm going to take this lighter tan. I'm going to lay that in. So now I have a lighter tone in the middle as the barrel chest rolls around. Then go back to my darker at the top. I'm going to clean my hands before I do some blending. I see a lot of chalk dust, but that's okay because I'm going to use it to blend. So I have the lighter tone in the center of that barrel chest as it rounds out, and then it's darker at the underside. If there's extra chalk dust, I simply tap it down. We don't have subtle definition here. We're just working on general definition now. So I have two legs here, but one is further away. So that leg that is further away, I'm going to actually use the darker brown pastel and go over that whole leg because it's in shadow underneath the horse and further away. I'm going to do the same thing with the two front legs. The one that's further away, I'm adding in this darker brown to the rusty color I already have so that it's in shadow, like so. But I still want that color to show. So on the front of that leg, make a stronger line using the corner of your pastel. I'm going to do the same thing here, just a stronger line of our base color. Can you see that? It's starting to build up. So the same thing occurs with the neck, because the neck is a large muscular neck that has girth, just like the barrel chest. I want to create lighter tones in the center, but darker as it moves at the two edges. So first I'm going to put in my base color again so that it's a richer color over the whole neck and blend. I'm going right up to that jowl line of that circle that we used for our horse's head. Now I'm going to take the darker and along this one edge, because it's on the underside of the horse, I'm putting in strokes in that same direction and I'm going to blend. And then at the top part, do the same thing. But the center section, I'll use this lighter tone so that it looks like the neck is rounding. I want to define the top of the horse a little more, so I'm going to use the edge of the pastel, come around, like that. Now that's just some subtle shadows. We're going to add in some more highlights and some more muscle definition in the two legs. But first I want to clean my hands. You know, I think of this racehorse and how Degas used to go to the racetrack with his friends. He didn't bet. He just went there to sketch and to draw, to prepare for paintings. But it must have been thrilling to watch those horses racing, giving it their all, right? Going all out. Only one was going to win the race, but that must have been something. You know, the analogy of running a race is in Scripture quite a lot. In fact, in the book of Acts, the Apostle Paul talks about it. Let me read it with you. Acts 20:24 says, "However, I consider my life worth nothing to me. My only aim is to finish the race and complete the task that the Lord Jesus has given me, the task of testifying to the good news of God's grace." See, Paul didn't want to give up, and he had some pretty hard times. I mean, he went through a lot, but he kept on going. Have you ever felt like giving up when things get really hard? I know I have. In fact, sometimes when an art project is hard, I feel like giving up. Has that ever happened to you? Paul reminds us that some things are so important, it's worth persevering. And certainly the job that he had to do to spread the good news of Jesus and who he was and what he did for us. He traveled all over to get that news out, even under incredible trials. But it was a race he was going to finish. And so some things are worth persevering through to get to the end, my friends. So I want to persevere through this project and finish working on our horse. And so that's what we're going to do. But I can tell you that pastels can be a frustrating medium. And anytime you're drawing something that's new subject for you, like if this is the first time you've ever drawn a horse, it will be challenging. But that's okay. Because if you work at something and you put your all into it and you're committed to practice and learning to do it right, just as Degas was, you'll have great results. So stick with it, my friends. Degas went to the racetrack and sketched hundreds and hundreds of horses, and he made many beautiful pastel drawings and oil paintings of racehorses. And he never felt that he got it exactly right. He just kept on going. Of course, we think his paintings are beautiful. So we're going to keep going. And now we're going to add in some highlight definition and shadow definition in this rear flank. So let's take a darker pastel, and in the center of this rear flank area, we're going to create like a little indentation by using the side of the pastel, where the kind of the muscle goes in there on the rear of the horse. And then right next to it with this golden color, we're going to add just a few rounded strokes right in front of it and blend that in. And that's kind of showing where the flesh kind of bulges out with that muscle there. Same thing in the front here. Take your darker brown pastel. The way the muscles wrap in the front leg of a horse, they wrap into each other as they go down into the bony leg. And so you're going to create in the center here at an angle kind of like a V, like a dark V. And then in the front here, use this lighter tone in the muscle. But what we're going to do is, because the horse's chest is broad, you're going to see that piece of the chest kind of poking out here on the profile. So with our base ruddy brownish reddish color, rust color, we're going to do that. As we add in additional layers of both light and shadow, as we create musculature on the horse, it's your choice if you want to blend or leave the strokes as strokes. Let me show you what I mean. I want to show you this painting by Degas. This is called Racehorse. And can you see the strokes in that horse that's right in the front? You see the actual strokes of the pastel used on that horse. Degas opted not to blend, but it's still a beautiful composition. Sometimes you don't want to rub away the color. Sometimes it looks better, it creates a better effect when you see the strokes. Here's a pastel portrait that I did of my niece Kate. And if this is close up, you can see a lot of the colors are simply blended together to show the skin. Whereas in the hair area, you see the individual strokes of the pastel. So some blended, some strokes. That's your choice as an artist. So I think in this hip area, I'm going to take and I'm going to make just some diagonal strokes with my cream, and then I'm going to use this lighter reddish tan and add in some diagonal strokes. And I'm not going to blend those in. I'm going to leave those as strokes. Same thing on the neck. I'm going to make some diagonal strokes with the tan, and then I'm going to add in a few strokes of this ochre color. I'm going to leave those as strokes. I just like the way that looks. Now to do the head, I'm going to go back to my base color, and I'm going to actually make it in the circular motion like that circle that was our structure underneath. And I'm going to even blend it in a circle. And then I'll stroke downward like this towards the muzzle and blend. But I want to be able to show both the top of the horse's nose and then the sides. And so to create that definition, I'm going to take my darker brown pastel, and on the sides of this forward part, just over here, making some strokes. Very gently blend. And then with the lighter pastel on the right side, create more definition as if it's the top of the horse's nose. And then as this muscle here, this rounded muscle, I'm going to actually use the pointed edge of my pastel, almost like I'm drawing, to create that more defined line around there. A few dark strokes on that side, and then right above it, kind of rounded, I'm going to leave them as strokes, this tannish color. Now here's where you can start to lay in a little bit more definition just to get placement right. So with the very dark brown, okay, in the center of that circle area that you used, I'm going to make a little circle with the corner of my pastel and then a arch over it as my eye. And then down here in the muzzle, another circle, kind of in the center, which is my nostril. And then I'm going to use the corner of my base color and just bump out just a little bit to the right there as if it's the top of the other nostril. Now for the mouth of the horse, not a lot of definition. Using the corner of the pastel, it's almost like a little, just like a dark indentation. That's really all it is. I think this is a great time to step back and take a look at it. I've been up close. I want to stand up. So right away, friends, by looking up at this, I can see that his neck is too narrow. And so I want to make some adjustments. And that's the great thing about pastels. You can continue to rework. So I want to broaden his neck a little bit, not too difficult to do. I'm going to use my eraser to pull up some of the pigment, and I'm just going to make his neck broader and even his head a little larger. So I'm not going to do too much detail yet. I just want to see if that gets me the result I want. So I'd have to move this nostril down. So let me just get this quickly in here, and then I'll do another step back and see if that got me what I want. Yeah, so that's getting a little closer. I think his chest could be fuller. You know, horses are very muscular animals. So I'm going to add a little more girth And I can add the definition this way by putting that shadow in. He has kind of a bigger barrel chest here. And then if I add more light tones on the side, it shows how it's fuller. So this is the important part about drawing. Now, friends, I've been drawing for many, many years, but I still adapt, adjust, change, erase. That's what happens. The more you look, the more you observe, the more you get a sense of what you like and what you don't like and what works and what doesn't. So I would encourage you to step away, take a look, ask a friend, and adjust what you think doesn't look right, okay? Now, to continue with our horse, we're adding in layers of color. That's what's so great about pastel. That's what Degas did when he started working with pastels. He started off being an oil painter, and predominantly anyone who was an artist at that time worked in oil paints. And pastels were only used for quick sketches. No one ever thought of soft pastels as being used for a final piece of art. But the Impressionists were the ones who changed that idea. Because of the immediacy of pastel, they could carry them anywhere. They didn't have to set up a lot in the studio. They just took a box of pastels and a paper. They could paint out in the air, called plein air painting, which was very popular for the Impressionists. And so pastels started to become seen as a medium that was worthy of being hung in a gallery, just like an oil painting. Degas was one of the ones who contributed to that change in the mindset of how people viewed pastels. So I'm going to add in some more base color because I'm trying to get really rich color on this horse. And I don't want too much tooth to show through. I do in the field, but not in the horse so much. So that's why I'm layering in the same. You think, well, Miss Pat, you already used that color. Well, yes, but I'm going to keep using it again and blending and blending and layering and layering. Being a little more careful when I'm up in these tiny spots like the ear. Now don't worry if you smudge outside of an area. That's what the kneaded eraser is for, because that's great at getting that for you. Now we want to get some more definition in these legs. So these joints here, you're going to want to use the edge of the pastel, the kind of the pointy edge of the square pastel, and you're going to outline that circle of that knee and then make some long strokes using the direction of the legs, long strokes in the direction of the legs on that back side of the leg. Around the knee, down the back side of the leg. Then take the lighter color and just a few quick strokes in the front, not at the knuckle so much, but on the shank here. And then let's do that in the back using the corner of the pastel around the hock on that back edge. Same thing on this back leg, around, down, and then with that front, we're gonna, now with that, the actual joint on that actual oval that we had used as our, you're going to actually use a very light tone and very lightly actually make like a little oval. There. They're very knobby. The legs of horses are very knobby. And tap that down. You're just doing some subtle blending. Remember I said we're not going to worry too much about the hooves. They're going to be hidden from view in the tall grass. So our head is lacking some definition here because I enlarged it a little bit, and so I want to work on that. So again, we want to lighten up areas that come forward, and we want to darken areas that recede. So I'm going to lighten up on the top of the muzzle. But remember I said this is a bay mare, which means he's darker at his points, the lower extremities, tail, mane, and the muzzle. So I'm going to actually use the dark pastel, and I'm going to make the front part of his muzzle or his face darker. And I'm just going to use some strokes right up to the front. And I don't want to blow, so I'm going to tap. And then where I've kind of gone outside the boundaries I want, this is where the eraser is such a great tool. I'm going to mold my kneaded eraser, and I'm going to gently just erase around there, because I can create more definition using the color of the hill behind there, like that. Now I want to use this dark brown, and I'm actually going to take out my black. Now, black pastel, let me warn you, my friends, black pastel is very powerful, and it really is in stark contrast to all the bright colors of pastel. So you only use black pastel sparingly. So I'm going to start with my darkest brown, and between the ears, I'm going to pull down some of that mane that comes from between the ears. And whenever you're drawing hair or fur on any kind of animal, you always make the strokes in the direction that the hair actually grows. And that helps to create more realistic texture. So since it's going to come from that center line on the back neck of the horse, I'm going to actually make the strokes come from there and go down, just like the hair would go. So start up at the ridge and have the hairs coming down on to the neck of the horse. And we're just assuming that all of his mane is on this side. And the strokes are going to get just a little bit shorter by the time you get like right above the leg. Then they're a little bit shorter, and that's where we're going to stop. But we're going to now, this is where we're going to go back in, and we're going to add in just a little bit of the black. Same thing though, you're making sure the strokes are in the direction that the hair grows. That is so important for achieving texture. Same thing applies to the tail. Start with this dark brown, out and down, out and down. It's going to wrap, because we see not all of it is showing, right? And so it's right around that flank of the horse. And you kind of want to be a little loose, not so controlled. And then we're going to add in a few, not too much, a few black. Now you can do some blending, but you really do want to see the strokes, right? Because this is hair. So you can do some blending, but you really do want to see strokes. So I'm only going to very, very gently blend. And certainly when you're using black pastels, you must be really careful and make sure you clean your hands. Now I can see some chalk dust, and I don't want to brush and I don't want to blow, so I'm going to tap. There we go. Now, why did I get out these other colors? Well, I'm going to step away again. I want to take a look at my horse where I need to provide some more definition. Oh, I definitely see I want much more definition between the shoulder and the barrel chest and in that second leg. So here's where your knowledge of the color wheel is really important. Color opposites tend to dull each other out. So for example, the opposite of red on the color wheel is green. This is a very reddish color that we have as a base. The opposite of orange on the color wheel is blue. And you can see, because this is a very rusty color, there's a little bit of orange, a little bit of red in there. So I'm going to want to use the color opposites of those two colors, green and blue, to help create some shadow. I don't want to ever use the black pastel for shadow. If you look at any Impressionist painting, they never use black paint. It's incredible. They always used other colors to create the shadows. Deep purples, deep blues, deep greens. It's one of the wonderful things about that whole Impressionist era. So we're not going to use black. We're going to use the dark blue green, and the dark green as our colors to help create shadow. And we're going to leave them as strokes where you see the color. Isn't that great? Take a look at this Degas painting right here in the studio. I look at the flank of this horse here, and I see that the highlight is created with a light blue. You wouldn't think of that as a highlight on a horse. Okay. Look at how the end of this horse is created and the colors, and how Degas left the strokes of color. And even here in this front musculature of this horse, how he used light green. So keeping the strokes of color is a really important part of kind of creating the Degas style. See, this is where Degas was acting as an Impressionist, letting his strokes show rather than very careful classical blending, and using all color to do highlight and shadow as opposed to sticking with white and black. So I'm going to use some of the blue, and right where this front leg meets the torso, where I want it to show against the torso, I'm going to make some strokes of this dark blue like this, because it's against that orange red. And I'm going to blend just a little bit in. Wow, can you see how that's already creating a really strong definition? I'm going to add some green here in that further leg. Leave those strokes. I think I'm going to do the same here with this leg, this further leg. I'm going to take some green against that reddish. Look at how that really creates much more value definition, and I'm leaving it as a stroke of green. Now what about in the horse itself? Well, I think here where that muscle of that beautiful muscular head against the neck, I want to create definition there. So I'm using some green strokes there, down in the direction of the neck. And that makes that jowl pop out. And then I'll take, I think I'm going to use this brighter orange. We're going to break that. And even this brighter red, which you might not think when you're doing a brown horse. And I'm going to use, I think I'm going to use this brighter red, and right on parts where there's more highlight coming in, like the sun, I'm going to make some strokes of this brighter red here, right across the top torso. I'm using diagonal strokes. I just like the way the diagonal strokes look. You can already see that that's creating much more definition. And then here in that beautiful muscular part of his jaw, I'm just going to use some diagonal red strokes as I go around. And then I'll take this peachy color here, add in that. I want more definition here at the eyes, so I'm going to take the blue. I'm going to be very careful. Now here's the fun thing, friends. If you don't like it, you can get rid of it. You can either smudge it out entirely, or you can erase it with the kneaded eraser. I lost, when I added more to his muzzle, I lost the nostril. I need to make sure I put that back in. I'm actually going to take my eraser, create a really fine tip with my eraser. That's why I love kneaded erasers. And I'm going to erase out an area like a little semicircle here. And within that, use my dark brown. Put in that little circle for that nostril there. I'll put that black back. Remember I told you, you only use black sparingly, so I like to put it back in the box so I'm not even tempted. So I think it's time to do a step away, okay? Let's take a look. Okay, it's getting there, my friends. It still needs a little bit more work. Opportunities for me to test out some other colors and some other strokes. How are you doing on your horse? Are you happy with it? Did you step away? Did you ask a friend to hold it, or have you looked at it from a distance? See what you can add. This is where you want to add in maybe some more definition into the ears. The front of the ear, we're going to assume that the one ear for this horse is forward a little bit, so we're going to create that little indentation in the ear right there. I'm not going to blend that, I'm just going to leave that as a stroke. And like I said, we're not going to worry about the bottom of the horse except to darken the legs, right? Because of this breed, it's a bay mare. The very bottom of the legs we're going to darken. So I'm adding this dark brown. And I think I'm even going to take my green blue color here, add that in because that creates a much darker value right under that hock and that knuckle, like that. Now what about our friend that's on the other side of the fence? He needs some detail. So because he's further away, though, we're not adding a lot of detail. Remember, we learned that, right? When something is in the distance, you don't see a lot of detail. So we just want to suggest some things about this horse. So take your lighter tan, step up from the one that you use as the base color. And we're going to circle in the head here. I'm going to just blend that in. And the top of the body, like so. And then with our darker color, I'm going to use the corner to kind of define under the head, coming down to the legs, like so. And you're going to make that semicircle mark to kind of show where the front of the torso meets the legs. Darker legs towards the bottom. And I'm going to take a highlight, something lighter, put a little blaze on the front of that horse. A blaze is like a white mark on the head. And using the dark, I'm not going to have a lot of detail, but I'm just going to make small little smudgy marks that suggest where the eyes would be and where the nostrils would be and his mane. And then at the very back on the right, a few quick strokes that would suggest a tail. So you don't have a lot of detail, you're just suggesting. That's part of the Impressionist style as well. You're suggesting what it is, rather than showing a lot of detail of what it is. So that's what that horse would look like from that distance. So the last thing we're going to want to do before we wrap up for today's lesson is to just very quickly put in the some defining lines for our fence. And so I'm going to use this, this light tannish color. And this is very quick. I'm just going to make some subtle strokes of where the posts are, like so. And they don't have to match up exactly to the drawn lines if you're having trouble seeing them. And then for the rails. And remember I said you never do one continuous line. You treat each section like it's individual, because that's probably what it was. Right in front of our horse here. The next time we're together, my friends, we're going to put in a lot more detail. We're going to fill in our pasture, the rest of our hill, and add in a lot of lights and darks for those finishing details so that we can finish up our horsing around. I'll see you next time.